Y'all be there, my hairless fellow minx of the blue sea. It's me. We back. You already know because of what time it is today, how hype I am. But as usual, right? Contain the hype. Let's keep it concise. Let's get it right into it, man, because I got a lot of stuff to do today. But I want to take a chance to talk to y'all while I can, man. Chapter 1035 Zoro vs. King. Y'all already know what it is, man. Hailing in from the south side of Shimosuke Village. It's the Senpai of the Santo Ryu, man. Roronoa Zoro, man. And regardless of what the boy, Fraud D. Sim Smoke, the legend, has to say about some of these accusations, which, hey, man, you know, it's Shimosuke Village till I die, but the man has some valid points. We're not going to get too much into that, but if y'all know, y'all know. Cover story. We finally got one after, I think it's been almost 100 chapters at this point, it feels like. And it's interesting because what Germa? Now, y'all know, especially with the boy Recon, I was joking with him about how his channel is marked now because of some of the questions that I asked that are very suspicious of the series, right? Um, Obviously I make jokes about, you know, Oda not know who I am, which he shouldn't. But it's very interesting when we have specific discussions that, once again, now we're here with the cover story again, like with the Ulti chapter and a few other chapters, like the Right Hand Man chapter, which that was a little bit more obvious because of Killer and Kid, but you get my point, right, about these jokes and how I've been asking when Germa left Whole Cake Island. One, how did they escape? Because it clearly wasn't the same method as the fishermen for obvious reasons. And the other part, did Big Mom still have access to the technology, right? The cloning and all that other good stuff because they didn't have time to pack that up. And I specifically talked about this last week again with the boy Recon. Boom. Here's Oda. Well, this is how they did it. I am wondering, is this being told in present or past tense? Because some time has passed since Whole Cake Island. So I'm not really sure if just because we get it currently, the cover story doesn't mean this is when it's happening. So maybe we'll get some indication about that. Because we also know Capone and Chiffon in the gang have also traveled around during this time period, right? Since the time we left Whole Cake Island into the Wano arc. So that'll be interesting. Enough of that, though. Sanji gave the little KO screen, like we said a couple of weeks ago, because it's been a couple of weeks since I talked to y'all. Queen is actually defeated. Where Queen is going, who knows? But Sanji gave him the ultimate EX donkey kick, sweet chin music, all that, all to the jaw, right? Gave him all new dental work. He's gonna have a front grill. The next time we see King, he's probably gonna have a gold grill at that point, right? We haven't, other than Luffy and to a certain extent Brook, right? Zone regeneration doesn't seem to involve teeth. Maybe the fishman, right? But he got rocked. And with the cover story being what it is, we don't know where Germa is headed to begin with. And given the crossover of Queen mentioning the Vin Smoke as a whole, right? And he makes it sound like him and Judge, besides the Mads thing, like there's advantages that Judge has had over him at some point, and Queen just seems like he's has something to prove. If the German and Queen end up crossing over in some weird way, that would be interesting. But he won't be in the rest of this arc because Sanji KO'd him, man. He sleep big time. But it doesn't necessarily mean, like I said, Queen is actually he's not dead, right? He's just knocked out or whatever you want to call it. And Reiju and Gangster Gastino still haven't been referenced yet. Doesn't mean they will, but they haven't. So he's still, I don't know, like I said a couple of weeks ago, just because Queen's out of the story doesn't mean Queen's technology and his influence in the scientific community will not stay with us, right? Because of Vegapunk and so on and so forth. So, that's that with that. And then we get to the Chuji thing with the rat. And shout out again to the boy Laz, who weeks ago had mentioned the tie in to the mouse thing with Sanji's backstory. I was like, oh, yeah, that made so much sense because the Queen and Sanji fight it pretty much mirrored all the conflicts Sanji had back in Whole Cake Island, right, with himself and his views on the world and so on and so forth. So even though soulmate may or may not be important, I thought that was kind of cool. And when he passes out, right, and collapses, is this because of he did use a lot of hockey, and Sanji, for all we know, is not really used to using hockey consistently like this, right? So it could be because of that. He's just tired, right? But he has natural regen now, Or is this a gag? Is this is this nosebleed cooling time? But I mean, he is in the pleasure hall, so let's not forget what we're talking about here, right? But we'll see what's up with that. I just didn't know if they were referencing, the change that Sanji was worried about when he mentioned the Zoro. If I'm different, I don't know if it's a gag. I don't know if it's he's tired or is it that, right? Um, Hopefully, it's just a gag. We open up with Zoro, right? The continuation where he gave him the conqueror's clap, right? It was coming. And now we see King's gimp suit is starting to fall apart. King's like, yo, I might as well take this off anyway. And we've made jokes about this, right? About King's face being seen, things of that nature, and does it really matter or not? Well, we'll get to that in a few, right? Zoro makes the assumption now, right, that when King's flame is out, he's faster, but his defense is weaker. And it was similar to that Hunter x Hunter, right? The bomb man, um, or Gladius ability that I mentioned. That maybe his fire had something to do with why he could deal with damage, in a sense, and that does seem to be the case where he uses his fire and/or explosions to weaken forces against him. Is kind of how I worded it, and that actually seems like. Now I don't know how that, in reference to Lunarian and mythology, that will tie in, because as we can see, King might as well be a Bleach character. I mean, this dude looked like he walked straight off the corner of Waco Mundo somewhere, right? But he has that Skypeanish design, which most of us, that's kind of what we assumed what the Lunarians could be because of how they look. And then we see the facial tattoo now. So, of course, that's going to tie into play later on, I'm sure, right? It's not an accident. And that's just what I thought. I thought he looked like a straight Espada. I was just waiting for resurrection. Um, the fodder bringing up rumors is interesting because we don't really know how Lunarians are referenced in the story. It's never happened before now. So when these fodder say the rumors are true, so it's been rumored before that King was a Lunarian. So people would have had to at least know what those were, right? Even if they never seen one. They had to be aware of it, right? Because how would they know about the black wings, the white hair, and the tan skin? These seems to tie in, and once again, JD Legend, the fraud himself, and his accusations against Zoro's personality, right? These past few weeks. Hey man, it is what it is. But how would this father know this story when we've never heard it? And he does, like I said, he looks kind of peenish. He has the whole, I guess, I don't even know what type of reference you want to call it, but spiritual reference, right? The Archangel of Death, or the Angel of Death, the Archangel, Michael himself. He kind of has that whole vibe to begin with, as do the Skypians. And like we had talked, reference before, are they a reference of like, are the Lunarians the Skypians of the underworld? But they live on top of the red line, right? Which makes that juxtaposition. It's similar to like, well, not say similar, but I was reminded of it seeing the German snail, right? How they're able to, they're the only creature that we've seen being able to transverse the red line in the to begin with. So I know these things are going to tie together with Void Century. It's not an accident, right? Especially with the chapter cover being what it is. And it's interesting that just offering information on King is worth 100 million. Just information. Not even if it's, I don't know how they would verify information about King, but that part is interesting to me because does that mean the Lunarians or just one Lunarian existing is a bigger threat to the entire world government than anything the O'Harans did? If you base that off of Robin's initial bounty as a child, which one do they want to keep more of a secret? The O'Harans are somewhat of a secret, but not really because that was more in recent history of the One Piece timeline. The Lunarians, this had to be more than likely hundreds of years ago, right? Because we see in this chapter in the flashback how young Arbor, which I'm sure his name is chosen, right? Definitely check out the Viz this week. There's a lot of things in this chapter that you're going to need the Viz translation for because this morning I've already read 3 or 4 different translations of this chapter and certain things that Zoro says and certain part of this conversation with Kaido, you can tell people still aren't exactly sure on how that's going to be translated. So again, always support the viz. This is exactly why, because this stuff will matter. Guarantee it will matter. But I thought that was interesting that just the information alone is worth more than Robin's entire bounty. As a child up until now, it's just that's interesting to me that the world government views the Lunarians on that level, given what we assume their interaction probably was, right? And then it's just I don't know, man. But anyway, they all get what they all get torched because they did this. They made the same mistake Mister Check Your Route Apu made in front of the Derby High Cipher Pole guy. It's bad enough you snitching on me, but you're gonna snitch in front of the people who already don't care about the law. The only laws that they know in One Piece is Trafalgar D. That's the only law that they know. They don't care about any of that. There's nothing protecting you from King. There's nothing protecting you from Cipher Pole. Greed does stuff to you, man. I tell you, some of these fodder really don't know their place. Losers. But I don't know, man. He just used the attack that, and it kind of reminded me, like we talked about before, this relation of Katakuri and King, obviously for different reasons, but their face being seen was a thing, right? Katakuri's was more personal. King's is probably slightly personal, but also because of his backstory, his people, and how that, what it seems like every race or species, whatever you want to call it, has a poneglyph. So I'm thinking like that's kind of like what the vibe is with the different races, right? Having poneglyphs in their possession. That, how can I put this? I don't know, but they're still similar, even though they're different. They're still similar, right? The whole face thing, and then as soon as his face is seen, what happens, right? He eliminates everyone who's seen it except for the person he was fighting. Same thing that Katakuri did. So the end of this fight with Zoro may be similar to that, where sure he makes references about King's race and this interest, we know Zoro kind of doesn't really care, even when he says later, right? Whatever, you're special, that's fine, but that has nothing to do with me, right? It's got nothing to do with the Senpai, the Santorio. That's your business. Now, again, Viz translations will make it more apparent what Zoro's intentions are about this information because, according to him, he only needed it to win this fight. But that still doesn't tell us what the Lunarians are, right? Combat abilities don't necessarily translate to why something is a bigger threat or of importance. It's just kind of giving you an idea. And then if you reference that with other mythologies, I'm sure you could come up with some reasons about the Lunarians, especially because of how the Skypean history is to begin with. It's very mythological to be right in nature, respectively to the human world. So it's just like with King, how could it not go that way too? I just don't know what it means for Zoro and how he uses that information other than maybe discuss it with Robin. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like who does it really benefit? It doesn't help Luffy. Maybe it helps Sanji in some way. I'm not really sure about that. The only person it would seem to benefit the most would be Robin, right? To know that kind of thing. And because the O'Harans are in a way similar to what the Lunarians are as far as how the world government viewed it. Like I was just comparing them earlier. So that's the only thing I could really think of. And I guess Sanji won't be taking any tech from King, by the way, which was one of the ideas I had since he sent him flying, right? He might catch up to Cracker, right? And those guys that Kaido cracked when he put the Luffy's bounty poster on their face. Like he's gonna catch up to those guys somewhere. He might even lap them right at that point. But yeah, man, that part, this part of King's backstory is gonna be a little bit more important, right, than Wano itself, and just I don't know his design, everything about him, man. Especially when you think back to him using that, pulling his face all the way back. Just imagine if he didn't have his mask on when he did that, how crazy that would look. That's probably why I would have him do it with the mask on. Because you think about those moments, and then you see King with no mask on, it's like this dude doesn't even belong in this series. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Y'all tell me what you think about that part. But Zoro basically saying like, tell me about your race, and then the typical bad guy thing. Then why do you need to know about that? I'm going to kill you anyway. You know what I mean? But he attacks Zoro after transform, and he basically uses Sky Attack from Pokemon, and Zoro basically like he gets, again, this is, there's just been these references to one person being above the other, right? King flies in the sky, Zoro's been saying, you looking down on me, and those kind of statements. So getting knocked to the ground again, it's like Zoro's really getting upset by this. You could tell it's kind of bothering him, right? But at the same time, he enjoys overcoming adversity. Like that's his thing, right? So they both talk about we're both tired, we reached our limit, similar to the Sanji and Queen fight, right? Both basically characters like, yeah, it's about that time because we need to wrap this up for the main fight, right? We know what the main card is. Like this is part of the main card, but this isn't the main card. So we know what time it is. But Zoro basically says like, look, you might be the right hand man of Yako, right? And y'all been in power for quite some time. But we're in the same boat, man. You guys ain't different for it. Y'all gotta make room for the Mugi Waters, man. It's that time, right? We're no longer we got continuous draft picks. We're not in the early days of Oklahoma City. We didn't know what Russ, KD, and Hard were gonna be at one point in their careers. Like, obviously, some stuff with KD was obvious, but you get my point, right? This isn't the Seattle Seahawks where we got all the draft picks and we was hyped. No, 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 no. We're on top now. We are the team, man. We coming for the belt. You know what I mean? We got one half of the tag team got one belt. You know what I mean? My man got his belt, and we know what time it is. So that's just, I don't even know what to say because of what part we are in the story. So when we start seeing these more detailed attacks, right? This isn't playtime anymore. Like there's no more to, when it comes to fighting anyway. You'll still have your jokes and people talking trash to each other, but you don't see any more trash attacks anymore from the monster trio. That won't be a thing, right? We're talking about Conquerors, Coding, Advanced Hockey, and anything else that it could do within respective to physical and or let's say organic and inorganic materials, like a reference with Shanks in the ship, Hockey being able to damage physically objects, but not physically people yet. But that may be a thing at some point, right? But Zoro's basically just saying what it is. The supernovas as a whole, whatever. But when it comes to the Moogie Waters, man, you know what I'm saying? Your Yonko crews, we're Yonko crew. That's what they're basically trying to tell everybody at this point. Whether they believe it or not, doesn't even matter. We here now, man. Until we get put off the playoffs, we're here. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. So he initiates an attack after getting knocked to the ground. And for me, this is heavy, man. Because first off, King of Hell. Now I don't know if this is gonna be a new command and this is the way they're translating it for him actually using Enma, this King of Hell part, or is he actually saying King of Hell? This might be just how he says Enma now, like it's a Shikai or a Bankai. Santoryu. And then King, doing that typical anime thing. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't get so cocky. Kaido will be the next Pirate King. According to King, it's all about, oh, no. His man, what? What Club Kaido, man? Because it's what? And you're done, son. That's who he rep for. So then we cut to a flashback, and we're finally getting the King backstory, which we got that before Queen, right? We might not even get a Queen backstory now. Maybe we do through the German somehow, but I have to assume this is Punk Hazard, right? The PH, I figure, is put there on purpose for us to see, right? Because given how secretive this topic is, there's really no reason to be secretive about the location when it's already been applied, right? As far as Kyle being an experiment on and all these other things like the numbers, even going back to Punk Hazard, you remember the door that we used to think that was a symbol for Kaido, right? But the Beast Pirates, I've talked about this before, but the Beast Pirates logo changed. If you would have thought that what it was, it's not the same. Those two don't add up. That this may have actually been the lab or area where people are experimenting on, because we see that machine that our boy Arbor King was hooked up to. And if you see Kaido when he's standing there, he has to change just like Yamato does, right? When we are introduced with the Yamato slash Odin, right? Kaido has those same chains, and I don't know if there's a reason for it. I mean, obviously there's a reason for it. You have to change Kaido, but you know what I mean. The reference to his own daughter, right? Him being cuffed too, and then even in the conversation with Arbor here, asking him about changing the world. This sounds like there's been ideas about this in Wano that it's possible that Kaido thinks he's Joy Boy, and by him saying I'm the only one that can change things, meaning people being oppressed and whoever knows else, right? He thinks he's the only one that can do it with that smile on his face. It looks just like Roger's smile. So it's like I'm not saying Kaido's a D, but maybe he wanted to be one and he can't because that's something you're born as. I don't really know how that part works, right? Because we still know he's not even 100% human. So how that ties in may be important to the whole Joy Boy thing to begin with. But the look on his face, right? It's like of a hope. It's not just I want to rule. He doesn't say anything about ruling, right? He says I'm going to form my own pirate crew. So we know this is post rocks. And because he says I'm not going to sell you out, and the like betrayal with Kaido has been referenced 3 or 4 times, right, throughout the arc, that we kind of assume that's something must have happened with betrayal in the first place, especially how many times he's been captured, right? People have betrayed him before because of money, just like we've seen in this chapter, the fodder, right? They have no business even saying nothing like that. Like about King, and they still did it. So you can kind of make the assumption that people would do the same thing, even though it's no. They still want those dollars, or recognition or ties. They want something. So sometimes people's wants will take them to illogical places, like telling Kaido you're gonna do something to him. I don't know. It's just you guys know what I'm talking about, but I did notice that he had the cuffs just like Yamato, and he's holding his mace, getting ready to go to work, and they leave, and we see King's had a sword from jump. So even though he doesn't classify himself as a swordsman, we see him in the panel when they're walking away from what we assume to be Punk Hazard. His sword is also on fire. References his own ability, and as well as like he's literally standing on the right hand to Kaido, right? And Kaido's like, look, Arbor, that's cool, but this government name, that's not gonna work for you, homie. You're way too strong to be Arbor. Like that really matters, but you get what I mean. Your name is King now. You gotta do. You're my right hand man. Oh, no. Man, that's gonna be so dope in the anime. I I'm really trying to. You guys know how I get. When I start getting rambly, it's just my brain is doing too much, and I want to talk for longer. But obviously, we can't. It's just it's take a deep breath, right? But that part really, you know, the Joy Boy thing kind of tied back to what he said to Luffy, right? When he one clapped him, when Luffy was talking about being the king of the pirates, and Kaido was like, what kind of king did you just say? That kind of statement. And King also does something later on in the Zoro fight that Kaido does that I find weird. And maybe this is just a bad guy, how I talk down to people, because you can't really tell sometimes that Kaido has a superiority complex. But with his statements about humans, what he said to Yamato, it makes me think something different, which is it's kind of weird, right? And we've seen the same thing from King telling Zoro, like, no human would be able to defeat me, which you have to have that type of mentality given what King's backstory probably is, right? We just seen him tied up to a machine that looks way more advanced than any technology we've seen in the series so far. These dudes just got trains, right? We only seen one hot air balloon and two submarines, one being Laws and one being a bootleg version that they pieced together from Walmart or something. Those guys who kidnapped that princess during the Return to Reverie arc. Their technology is not that advanced. So these endurance, which it could just be electricity, right? But it looks very MRI esque, right? So it's just like there has to be other stuff going on with the technology that the world government has access to in comparison to the rest of the world. Who some of them, like in Alabasta, water is not an everyday thing for them. So I just, man, the world government, man, what they're up to is beyond heinous, right? Like it just has to be because of the pieces that are put together through some of these races, right? With the Skypeans and the fishmen and the mink and then now humans too, and then the Lunarians who could be cousins of the Skypean in some way. I want to know how Kaido knew that Arbor was a Lunarian prior. Like he had to have this. Like, is this going into God's Valley backstory type stuff when we get the main card? With oh no no no, one clap Kaido and the goat with the coat. It feels like that's what it's setting up for if they're going that route. Because if you think about the conversations during the Yamato fight with Kaido, the now what we're getting in the backstory with King, the comments he said to Big Mom, it's like it's almost unavoidable at this point that we're gonna have more backstory on Kaido either through God Valley, his reasons for being a pirate. Because up until this point in this King backstory, Kaido wasn't a pirate. Maybe he was a pirate because of rocks, but he hadn't started his own crew yet. This seems like King was his first crewmate, right? That was his Zoro, right? Is his first round draft pick, right? That's who he said, "Yo, you coming with me?" Compared to whoever else was there, because we know he ended up with access to the numbers and things of that nature later on, which we assume also come from Punk Hazard because of the ice wall thing. Kaido ends up coming. It seems like the same place he was oppressed at, he came back to inflict terror or use them to get to whatever his ultimate goal is. Which for him, it almost at this point, it seems like he thinks he's supposed to be Joy Boy. And maybe that's something even Yamato was aware of. That's why he never gave him. That's why Yamato never gave Kaido access to Odin's journal. Not just because she doesn't believe in Kaido, but also because Kaido maybe had this identity crisis of him being a D and being Joy Boy, but he can't because he's an Oni or something. Some kind of crazy reversal like that, play like a play on the cliches, for everything that Kaido has is infinite, what seems to be infinite strength and knowledge to a certain extent, his patience and everything else. He can't be a D. He can't earn his way to be a D. He can't just be Joy Boy because it doesn't work like that. And maybe that's why he's somewhat suicidal, because the one thing he wants to achieve, he just straight up can't, right? Because fate or inherited will says otherwise, or I don't know. Maybe that's where that's going. But I for a Zoro fight, we kind of knew where this was going to go. Like him being able to cut fire, and then this King Imperial Flame being referenced to like magma, similar to Kizaru reference with Sanji. Maybe Zoro fights Akainu, man. We just don't know it yet. Because he's the one person, like, yeah, he's got to fight Mihawk or Shiryu, or possibly even Fujitora, maybe Baldhead Gorosei, Gandhi Gorosei. But there's nothing, it doesn't have to be Sabo. It makes sense for the other characters to do it, but I don't know, man. It might just be Zoro, because maybe like, if Akainu has to die, Luffy won't do it, but Zoro most certainly will. Well, Sabo would too. He's kind of psycho. People don't remember how crazy Sabo actually is, which may be part of the reason why he got captured because he is slightly sadistic, right? Mentally speaking. But he's already using conquerors and Kinemon's, stolen jutsu fire style, and the panel being similar to when Odin cut Kaido, and also when Zoro cut Kaido, and the legend of Zoro is already building in Wano, and the references to dragons and fire, all the entire series, right? Even going back to Wanted, Ryuma's design, everything. This dragon style, I really want to see if it's translated like that because I don't think I've ever heard him say dragon style. That part really, I was like, hmm. And, because King was like, well, I'm going to scar, if you survive, I'm going to scar you worse than you ever seen in your life. Meanwhile, he's walking around with Mihawk's autograph across his chest. The homie, he does not care about stuff like that. And you don't hit harder than Mihawk. Pre-time skip. King, you're that dude, but you're not Goathawk, right? Dracula D. Goathawk, right? But King making that statement similar to Kaido about the inferiority of a human defeating him, right? And then you see Zoro, like I said, this dragon style was weird, and calling it King of Hell again. This is an Emma thing. Three dragon style, 103 senses soaring Jinku dragon. No. Once again, you already know because of how I feel about Rurouni Kenshin and how Oda treats Zoro as a swordsman. You already know what panel I'm thinking about, man. Shisio versus Kenshin. Mm. Look, you already know we gotta talk again because there's just so much to talk about in this chapter as far as the world building, some of the fighting, what this means for the story later, Void Centuries. This is not the kind of thing you can go extensively when you're talking about a chapter, but some of this information, even the cover story, right, tells us what's going on with the story. Like Oda's getting ready for post Wano stuff, right? If you think about it, we haven't had a cover story the entire Wano arc. I don't think. I'm almost positive. Maybe towards the beginning of Wano, like chapter early 900s, right? Maybe with the chiffon. Oh yeah, matter of fact, it was the chiffon and gang beige cover story. That was the last one. Then we got a bunch of the art ones. For us to get this one now with the Germa and how they tie in to the story as a whole, scientifically speaking, and then now with the things that happen in the chapter, you can tell. Although we don't know where we're going after Wano, it's not. Nothing's guaranteed, right? Robin's safety isn't guaranteed. Whatever happens with the Yonko isn't guaranteed. Blackbeard's interference isn't guaranteed. The Revs situation, none of this stuff is guaranteed. So although it doesn't seem like it, there's actually more chaos going on outside of Wano than it is inside of Onigashima now. Onigashima will just tie up certain pieces of the story that maybe isn't as big of a threat as they will be going forward. But I hope you guys enjoyed all the Sunfire Santry greatness that we got. We'll be going more into depth about attacks and abilities, what this means for later, obviously. You guys be safe out there. Enjoy your streams and Discord. Some of y'all I talked to already. Some of y'all I'll talk to in a few hours. Appreciate y'all stopping by. And we'll see you again in a few days. Peace.